You're listening to Must In-Laws Be Outlaws, the podcast that proves even the rockiest in-law relationships can turn into the greatest friendships.
Want the inside scoop on how we did it? Stick around.
Hosted by Lucette Bloomgarden and
Kathy Riva Bloomgarden. Okay, so what's on your mind, Lucette Bloomgarden?
It's very interesting. We constantly talk about our relationship.
And let's clarify for the listener, we're a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law.
Exactly. And we are very, very close, and we love each other. And we're proud to be able to say that. But it didn't start that way.
She's right.
It actually started rocky. It really did. We had a couple of rough times, more than a couple. But today, we're very fortunate and very grateful for what we have.
Yeah, so our hope is to offer wisdom and insight into how you can love someone that you might not even like.
What?
But also, just in being totally vulnerable, I feel really grateful to be here, but nervous. Do you feel nervous? I'm a little nervous. We've worked on this, and the making of a podcast, you guys, is super complicated and more work than I think I anticipated. So the work that we put in,
I actually feel very excited.
Good.
I really do. I feel very upbeat, very excited. It's taking both of us into a new realm, which I like a lot. And both of us love adventures.
True.
And this is a new adventure for both of us. I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. But more importantly, what we want to be able to do is to help people who have had issues. And let's face it, many, many daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law have issues.
I don't know what you're talking about. No. Should we start listing our issues? No. Let's get into the topic. What is our topic for today? Our topic for today is there another woman in your husband's life?
That's a very interesting topic. We all are concerned about that. And when you enter as a new daughter-in-law, you have your own feelings about the role that your new mother-in-law should take. But the mother-in-law has her own feelings about what role her daughter-in-law should take.
Well, let me set the stage. I met you in 1997, and I was from Mobile, Alabama. I lived in New York City at the time, and your middle son, my husband, was just the most fun, loving, great guy, but from New York, from Long Island, New York. So definitely we had a little bit of culture clash at the very beginning where I think I had a perm and a Southern accent, and I definitely wasn't sophisticated, put it that way.
She's absolutely right. She came from a different background, a different culture, and New Yorkers, as we all know, are very forthright and they say what's on their minds. But Southerners, not true.
That's right. I was always taught to be polite. In fact, I still said yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And that used to drive you nuts. You got so mad. And I was like, wait, but this is how you're supposed to address adults. This is the right way. But that wasn't, culturally, that's very specific to the South. So it's funny how these.
It was, it's interesting. One of the things my husband and I would say is we have 3 daughters-in-law and they're all foreign. And they would look at me and say, oh, really? I'd say, yes. One is from Spain, one is from Brazil, and one is from Mobile, Alabama. And they would say to me, Mobile, Alabama isn't foreign. I said, oh, you think so?
It's true. It's true. It was really so when we first met, I think that there were a lot of things you were surprised at. I'll put it that way, put it nicely. And I think that I had my own expectations that I brought to the table that weren't that had nothing to do with you, but my own expectations. I was looking for family ties and extended relationships that were just different than I had come from, and your family was slow to warm up to that idea.
Well, she's not wrong, because she wanted an automatic loving family, and we always felt that it takes time and growth. But let me ask you something. today, you know what our relationship is like, and she's smiling, and
Yeah,
I'm
we're
smiling.
I'd say
What do
almost best friends.
but what yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, me too.
What would you say if you had to give somebody one piece of advice? She's got tears in her eyes, and I have tears in my
It's
eyes.
true.
But what would
It takes
be
work.
the one key action you would say a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law need to do or have?
That's a great question. What does a daughter-in-law, I can speak from my experience. It took years for me to let go of my expectations of what I wanted to have happen and just allow and find the parts of you that I learned to love the most. And I can list them. Like, I love that you're fast to laugh. Like, you laugh at everything. Even if something goes wrong, you laugh. And I'm like, that's an amazing skill. I don't have that skill, by the way. I'm too much of a control freak.
You do.
But there's so many things that I could focus on that are your positive attributes, or I could have continued to be like, oh, I wish that I had this. I wish that, like the things that I wanted to have happen. So I had to learn with myself
So it sounds
to
to
manage my
me, if
expectations.
I'm interpreting this correctly, it sounds to me what you're basically saying is keep an open mind. Am I correct? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, and I also look at relationships like as an opportunity for growth. So I had to look at where I could what joy could I find in this, as opposed to just staying in like the smaller version of me that was like, poor me, my mother-in-law sucks. Like, I said that,
No,
by the way.
no.
People have heard that from me.
But the truth of the matter is, and I must credit Kathy a tremendous amount. And by the way, I think that's also part of a loving relationship is when you give the credit when it's due. You don't just say, "Oh, you look beautiful," and the person looks terrible. You have to
Yeah, you're
believe.
honest. Another thing I love about you is she is honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a fault.
But what I was about to say about Kathy is she's always willing to evolve and has evolved tremendously. But this is not just about Kathy and me, although our experiences will have a lot to do with how we advise you, because the wisdom we have acquired came through our own experiences, came through the mistakes we made and the positive things we did that really brought us joy and love. I would think that's very good. It's very interesting. We are welcoming people to send in any kind of questions.
Yeah, because
Uh,
at the end we're gonna do who gets the last word, and it's gonna be you. But I wanted to jump back into what you were just saying about our relationship isn't like this podcast is for everyone. But here are some examples that maybe are relatable from our life experience. Like, I remember when we first met each other, I was so taken aback because I sometimes what would happen is like we'd be at dinner and you'd say something that sounded nice, but then it turned out to be not so nice, and I had trouble like not handling that well in the beginning. So I want to give this as a real example because I've said this before in my talks, and people really resonate with this, and then flipping the script. So like you would say something like, oh, you look really pretty, but have you thought about putting on sunscreen? Or, like comments where that started out really nice and they turned out to not be nice.
like a mother says.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon. I've heard this a lot. But I remember the time where I didn't let it bother me anymore, like when I was able to flip the switch from what I would consider what I took as an insult, but then I flipped it because one day you said, you have really pretty nails. Have you thought about getting a manicure? And instead of my perspective being like, oh, she's giving me an insult, I actually said, I would love a manicure. Let's go together. And you said, great, I'll treat.
Yeah, no, but I wasn't giving you an insult.
That's my point. My
Yeah.
perspective was those comments were insulting because that's how my perspective was. But once I changed my perspective,
How do you change your perspective?
I'm in therapy, a lot of therapy. It was a lot of therapy. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like I wanted an ideal mom, to be a certain way.
Ask
and
your husband. He doesn't have an ideal mom either.
I mean, who does, right? My daughter definitely thinks I'm voted most annoying in our family, so I don't know that there is an ideal mom, but my point is like that that perspective shift that I was able to have with lots of counseling and help gave me space to love. Like I was able to find ways to love all the things. Like I had to open the door to my own heart.
Okay, that's a very interesting thing. And my next question will not be an easy one for you to answer. You said that it gave way for you to open your heart. It's easy to say when you've done it, and it's easy to say when you're giving advice, but how would you tell somebody how to open their heart?
I mean, you're the wisdom keeper in this relationship. How do you think it's done? Really, it's hard. It's different for everybody.
I think we all have, I'll tell you what my perspective is about all this. I think all of us, all humans, need to have their inner voice talking to them. And you have to have almost like a recording where you keep saying, keep an open mind, or
Oh yeah.
receive this with love.
At first, it sounded like you were talking about schizophrenia, but now I actually understand. You're like, oh, it's like a mantra you keep, like that the other
That's
person's
right.
not trying to harm me. The other person's actually doing their best.
Right,
The other
right,
person's not trying,
right.
and I'm doing my best.
Nobody on this planet can always say the right thing at the right time. So if somebody says something and you or I, anybody, interprets it with a negative spin, we have to say, you know what? I don't care how it was meant. I care how I perceive it. And if I can perceive it with a positive spin, not only will it change how I respond to her or anybody else, but it will change how they respond to me. But that's up to us. Everything we do, our own motivation, our own understanding. I'll bring something up, and you know about this. Uh, I feel family is very important, and I always have. And my one goal has always been to be really, really close to my family and to bring up a very close knit family. Thankfully, so far, it's true. But at one point in my life, there was a situation where my sister and I had a break. And I thought about it and I was devastated over it. And Kathy knows. I mean, I hardly ever cry, but I would cry a lot because it broke my heart. In any event, I decided I was not going to accept this anymore. So, what did that mean? What does it mean to be able to swallow your pride and go to that person and say, let's do something, which is what I did. I said, let's meet. Let's not meet in your house, my house. Let's meet in a neutral place. Long story short, I'm not going to go into the details right now. It worked. It worked because in her heart, she knew she wanted it. In my heart, I knew, and I was willing to open the door. And when she did not accept it at first, I opened the door wider and wider until she walked through. And I think that's the key to all relationships.
Yeah, I have to give that some thought, but I agree. I think persistence is definitely a good quality in love. But I think also, like, is there another woman in your husband's life? What happens if, to answer that question, what happens if the mother-in-law is super intrusive and the daughter-in-law has done all of this work and the mother-in-law still pops by? I mean, remember that show Everyone Loves Raymond, where the mother-in-law would just come by unannounced? Like that happens. So like how does a person handle, how do you set boundaries when there's unclear,
That's a very tricky
on
thing.
both sides, probably.
Oh, absolutely. How you say it can determine the future of your relationship, without a doubt. How, that is a very interesting thing, because how would you tell now? And pretend I'm not the mother in law, because our relationship now has evolved to a very wonderful spot. But how would you advise somebody to talk to their mother in law with whom they do not have a great relationship and say, you can't say to them, don't pop by? What would you say?
Well, just like with your relationship with your sister that was fractured, I think I think it's okay sometimes to find a third party person to bridge the relationship, and
Mhm.
especially with a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. But if you really, really care about what the relationship, the outcome is going to be. So I think about my daughter, right? Like I want to heal every possible thing so that my daughter doesn't inherit any mishigosh, any stuff. Like I'd like to have cleaned up my family lineage so that my daughter has a better leg to stand on with when she has her kids, you know. So I would hope that if there is an issue with a mother-in-law that is really serious, and the daughter-in-law doesn't feel like she can broach it herself, then I think that the husband has to step in and talk about it.
Ah, that's a very interesting thing. Very. Before we go any further, Kathy, tell them your mother-in-law joke.
Oh, okay. So why did the mother-in-law cross the road? Because she thought it was a boundary. That's appropriate.
And that sums up a lot of the in-law relationships. It
It
does.
does.
Yes.
And clearly I have no timing, but that's
Yeah, but it is very interesting about. Let me try to go back a little bit about what a mother of a son goes through. A mother of a son has spent what 22, 25 years being the only serious female in her son's life. He may have had girlfriends, he may not have, but the mother is the one. You get a sense of an exalted position. You begin to feel like you're the one, you're the one. All of a sudden, he brings along this other woman and he wants to be very devoted to her. She wants to feel that she's the special woman in his life. That's why Kathy said, is there another woman in your husband's life? Who is that other woman? That's the mother, and that's the mother in law. Okay, the mother in law needs to do things, and so does the daughter in law have to do things. What would you advise a mother in law to do?
I mean, back off. I
Okay,
just think
but
relationships need time to grow.
that's too superficial. But you just hit it with the next statement. Say that
I
statement
think
again.
relationships need time to grow. Like my husband and I, when we were dating, we needed to find our own method of communicating and where we landed on certain issues that didn't have so much influence or advice coming from the wings. And it took a little bit of time for us to navigate those waters with you and your husband because you have a close family and there are two other brothers as well. So there was a lot of there's a lot of influence that you obviously had. So it was really important for us to take a little bit of time to establish our own methods of communication. And it was helpful that he was able to express that to you and you listened.
Oh, absolutely, and he did. He was, I think, very fair. It was a very difficult position, and not all men can do it. Um, the one thing I would advise any woman who is becoming a mother-in-law or in a relationship now
Or
that
husbands. Everyone's got a mother in law if they're married.
right. Well,
Well, in
but
theory,
the point being is
partners.
when you as the mother-in-law are about to say something, think about how that's going to come across. Give it a second. You know, most of us blurt out things without any thought. And if you give it a second and you think, I don't know, most of all, and I hate to put it in the vernacular, back off. Back off. When in doubt, back off.
See, so we agree on something.
Yeah.
It's
No.
it's important, I think, and hard to carve out those initial relationships. So I just appreciate the fact that you were able to
And it's
try.
an ongoing experience and an ongoing learning experience for all of us.
It does bring up. It does make me think of a time where boundaries were crossed a little bit, where I allowed you into the delivery room for our daughter. You and my mom got to be in the delivery room for my
Yeah.
daughter.
Oh, that was
Now,
so funny.
let me tell you,
That was so funny.
that might not have been my best decision as a woman giving birth. Maybe it was the hormones talking, but At some point, my husband stopped paying attention to me and started paying attention to you. This is a problem. So boundaries were crossed. So I kicked them out. Both of them got kicked out of the delivery room. And
But the funniest part of
I
the
was
whole
so mad. I
oh,
like for years had anger over that, by the way. I did.
oh,
My husband was
we
just
were
making fun of me.
so, and the reason he laughed is because her mother, my husband, David was with us now.
Nope,
Oh,
just
so
the
your
moms.
mother and I,
Mm-hmm.
and we sat there. We were so thrilled to be there. We didn't say a word. We didn't blink. We were so quiet. And her husband kept looking at us and finally cracked up laughing because he'd never seen me in particular so quiet. So his laughing made Kathy very upset. So she kicked us out. But the funniest part was her mother and I kept running to the door to peek in, and they had a curtain, but the curtain only came down to our knees. So they could see us. We were standing there
That's true.
and they could see us there. And again, he's laughing. So we had to back off. Back off. There it is. There it is.
It's a reoccurring theme. Easier said than done. But I did have to go. I went to therapy over that. I was so mad at my husband for that. I really did. I was so mad. But isn't it funny, like looking in the
We were
rearview
angry
mirror?
too. We were angry because we got kicked out because he was laughing.
Looking in the rearview mirror, though, it's funny how emotions fade, right? So, like, what in the moment was so, like really pressing and triggering, and in the rearview mirror, it's just a lighter feeling. So, I would say that's the one piece of advice that I have is that whatever you're feeling in the moment, this too shall pass. If you
Very
allow
wise.
it.
Very
If you
wise.
allow it, this too shall pass.
Well, there's the operative word, if you allow it. Because a lot of people say, I'm right. I'm right. I'm the mother-in-law. I should have the last word. That's not correct. I'm sorry. As a mother-in-law, as a mother, I am telling you, if you have that attitude, you will not grow. But if you say, you know what? I'm going to let her have the last word. I'm going to let my son listen to her. You may find yourself pleasantly surprised with a wonderful, wonderful relationship.
Well, I want to get to the audience questions on who gets the last word, but I do just want to jump in and say one thing. What if the daughter-in-law is a piece of work? What if the daughter-in-law is the problem with boundaries? What if the daughter-in-law is like rearranging your kitchen and stealing your recipes and whatever? Like, what if the daughter-in-law is the problem? The monster daughter-in-law. They call it the monster-in-law. What would the devil daughter-in-law? I don't know. Anyway, what if the daughter-in-law is the issue? What would you say? Well, how would you handle if I was a nightmare? Maybe I was a nightmare, but how would you handle it?
You know something? I think the bottom line is when the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law are not getting along, the mother-in-law perceives the daughter-in-law as the monster daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law perceives the mother-in-law similarly. Nobody should think they're always right. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the most wonderful human being on the planet. Nobody is always right. Therefore, have a little humility. Take a look at yourself and say, okay, let me give her a chance.
Oh, that's big. I like that. Well, we're going to jump into who gets the last word because the audience is really the whole reason we're doing this podcast. It is for you. So we take questions and you can email us at mustinlawsbeoutlaws@gmail.com. But our first question, we have time for one. So which one do you want to pick? We've got a few questions here.
We actually put out a query before we even began this program.
Which one do you want to pick because we're running short on time?
Well, the one I'm going to do is she says she doesn't want advice, so how do I stay quiet? That's tough. That's really tough. Because what happens if you see them doing something and you know from all your experience that that's wrong? Should you say something? As the daughter-in-law, what do you think?
I think you just said there is no right or wrong. You just have to observe because people are going to learn from their mistakes and they need the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. If they come to you for advice, that's a different story. But if not, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I actually have another, I have two other daughters in law. One of the daughters in law did something that drove me crazy. She would say the kids would get up on like a ledge and they could fall. They could really fall and get hurt. They wouldn't die, but they could really get hurt. I would say, I'd say to her, "This is not good. You can't let them go." I was so upset. Her answer to me was, "Then they'll learn and they won't do it the next time." And then I realized what she was saying is much more than what it appeared. She wasn't just saying to me, "They'll learn." She was saying, "It's not your business. They're my children, and I am bringing them up the way I see fit." And I stopped saying it. It was hard, but I stopped.
That's amazing. Really. That's a testament to all of our growth. I can tell you that. Well, we'd love to hear from you. We want to do more Who Gets the Last Word, and this is your chance to have a voice. So definitely email us at mustinlawsbeoutlaws@gmail.com. And I guess we're going to tune out. But now, do we want to close it with a tagline? Do we want to test out the taglines? Why don't you guys vote on the tagline you like best? And here are a couple.
Good idea. Good
All right,
idea.
so you toss out one, I'll read the next one.
Okay. One could be from tension to triumph, navigating the in law or any relationships with grace and growth.
Meh. Okay, how about, let me tell you how I feel. How about unlocking the power of partnership, how in laws became allies?
And then the last one was navigating the hard parts, celebrating the heart parts. I like that. A conversation between in laws. Again, I just want to mention please, please send in any questions you want us to discuss. It's mustinlawsbeoutlaws@gmail.com. Today's sponsor, Kathy?
Well, I was just going to say, don't forget to let us know what tagline you liked the best in your email as well. And today we are sponsored by Lublu Jewels. And Lublu, you can, look, if you want the perfect mother-in-law, it starts with an engagement ring. So it's the perfect place for you to find a beautiful ring for your daughter-in-law, future daughter-in-law. And you can find these beautiful rings at lublunewyork.com.
And thank you for joining us today. We look forward to next time.